Welcome to Tech Yes, where tech makes sense. On this podcast, we discuss good products and good practice to make tech more human. I'm Dane, and I'm joined today by Ryan.
Hi, Dane.
Hi, Ryan. And today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing home automation. But first, Ryan, who are you? Tell me a bit about who you are. What's your claim to fame?
Ooh, my claim to fame, Dane. Well, my name is Ryan Johns. I live in Vineyard, Utah, and I work as a test automation engineer at Exactware Solutions.
Ryan, on a scale of coolness, is on the really high part of it.
Ah, Dane.
Ryan and I know each other from our college days, actually our freshman college days.
True. Very wild days indeed.
Ryan, I wanted you to be on the podcast today because out of all the people I know, you have one of the smartest homes that I know.
Ah, Dane, you're making me blush.
So Ryan, in your smart home, what is your current setup?
I'm glad you asked me, Dane. We started with Google Home, and we started there because that's our hub to connect all the other services. We already had a Google Chromecast connected to our TV, and that was really easy to connect, which gave us that great integration with voice to play any kind of music or video service we wanted on the TV. Our next step was to get Philips Hue lights, which we're able to control not just with the Google Home, but also with Siri and HomeKit.
Very nice.
Which is very convenient if we don't happen to be right next to the smart speaker. And those are fun because it's not just turn the lights on and off. It's not just dim the lights.
Turn them purple, turn them Savannah Sunset, turn them all those funny scenes that they have.
Yeah, Savannah Sunset is a favorite of my son's. It really lights him up, I'll tell you. Shortly after integrating the lights, which has been extremely convenient, we set up the ecobee thermostat.
Whoa. ecobee smart thermostat. Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the two heavy hitters as far as thermostats go are the Nest and the ecobee. And the reason why I like ecobee is because it's not just Google Assistant compatible, but it's also Siri compatible.
Dang it.
And
I want that.
Yeah, sorry, man.
I went Nest.
One other reason why I do think ecobee is slightly superior is you can buy additional sensors for separate rooms in your apartment or your home, and it'll just give you more data and give you a little bit more control over the temperature of your house. And so that has been extremely convenient. Shortly after that, we did connect our garage.
What?
Yes, we did.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So, I mean, we use that occasionally. I would say that's
What does that even mean? So you can remote open it with your phone?
Yeah, and unfortunately, since we kind of mentioned earlier, not everything works perfectly in home automation, and not everything's compatible with each other. So currently, I can only use an app on my phone to open or close the garage. I can't tell Google or Siri to do that.
That's a little
yet.
unfortunate.
So it's not quite where I would like it to be. But it can be convenient, and I can check its status when I'm away from the house. And so if you ever pull away from your house, you wonder if you shut the garage door. Well, that can give you a little peace of mind. And to kind of round off our home automation, we did install smart lock, which is great, especially when you're away from the house.
You have the August smart lock?
We do. Correct.
I like that one. I had that one for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, it's important to see what type of lock you have before you buy the device, because there's a lot of different locks out there, and not every smart lock will be compatible with what you have. We did recently for Christmas, my parents got us the Ring doorbell, which is incredible. So whenever there's motion in front of our door, or if somebody rings the door, there's two-way chat, there's live video.
Whoa.
It's actually really cool. So it's
a
great security device.
I didn't realize how many smart home thingies that you have in your smart home.
Well, I mean, do you ever see that movie Smart House, that Disney original movie?
No.
That really kind of inspired everything for me. I loved that movie growing up.
Oh, that's so cool.
Shout out to Disney Channel original movies. Dane, I'd be interested to hear what your setup is.
So I'm stuck a little bit in the multiple company smart home situation that don't all communicate with each other. So I live in an apartment in the city, and it's a smart home enabled apartment. That's kind of how they advertise it. So it comes with a smart lock, a smart thermostat, and a few smart lights. It's all cool, but it's super proprietary, and it doesn't communicate well with Google, Apple, or Amazon, or actually at all. And that's kind of unfortunate.
Is it just like a separate app for each?
Yeah, it's called the company's Dwello, and they do a good job. It's not bad, but I'm used to being able to tell Siri to open my lock, And the lights, the smart lights are a little dumb because there's no voice control, and the voice control is a big deal
Yeah,
when doing lights.
I would agree.
And all you can do is turn them on and off and dim them. Whereas like I also have hue lights, and I want to like control the colors. And then the smart thermostat was kind of a joke. It's just a boring old thermostat that's Wi-Fi enabled, so I can control it from when I'm away from home, which is cool. But we just upgraded to the Nest thermostat, and it's game changer.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, I can like see if I'm saving energy.
Set
I
a
can
schedule.
set a schedule. I can change the temperature so intuitively because like thermostats are awful. I've never been able to figure them out because like you try to change it, and I was like, I don't know if I changed the temperature. I don't know if it's actually working. Who knows? But so we have a smart lock. We have a few smart enabled lights that were built into the apartment, and then we brought in our own Philips Hue lights, which I use up in my loft that are fantastic. We have an Amazon Echo. We honestly don't really use it anymore. One, because I'm kind of waiting for Apple's HomePod, and I'm considering getting a Google Home because that will work with my Nest thermostat. So I kind of like downgraded my smart home a little bit when I moved and upgraded it in a way by moving into a smart home. So as you can see, I'm kind of in between.
It's an ebb and flow.
It's an ebb and flow, and I'm not in an ideal situation right now
Fair enough.
in terms of smart home. I want it to be better.
Well, I mean, if you're looking to get started, obviously you don't need to buy all these devices at once. In fact, I recommend you don't. But when you do want to be conscious of how much money you're spending, I bought all of my Philips Hue bulbs refurbished or used from eBay
That's a great idea.
because they're very expensive on their own. I think it's for the
40,
newest
50,
generation,
60.
it's usually $50 just for their standard bulbs. And now the great thing about Philips Hue is the bulbs last for a really long time. So when you buy them refurbished, you buy them used, you know you're still going to get a long time of use out of them. We bought our smart lock also refurbished on eBay. So
That's a really good idea because these smart home things are expensive.
they are.
They're straight up expensive. They're
Absolutely.
not cheap. And you have to do it incrementally. It's not all at once. I kind of do the smart bulb things just a couple at a time.
Right.
I'll buy like 2 every year.
Yeah.
And eventually I fill the whole house.
Yeah, exactly. One day.
So what does the smart home landscape even look like right now? Well, there's this show called the Consumer Electronics Show every year in Las Vegas where they premiere a lot of fancy new tech and concept ideas. It really seemed like the theme this year was smart home automation, which is why we're talking today, because I want our listeners to figure out how to navigate the smart home space or the home automation space.
I think probably the biggest headlines that came out of CES this year were smart artificial intelligence assistants, whether that be from Google, from Amazon, even from Microsoft. Wasn't a lot of talk from Apple or Siri at this CES, but that's come to be expected. They usually don't make a big appearance at CES.
Why is it a big deal that CES, there was such an emphasis this year at CES about voice control and AI assistance?
I think that's what makes home automation for the masses much more approachable and much more easy to understand. Because when you have a voice control device in your house, you tell it what to do and it just does it.
Because that interface is so simple, right? You just ideally just speak naturally, like, hey Siri, hey Google, hey whatever, and it just does your command. It follows through, it executes what you want it to do, right?
Exactly.
It's easier to do that than, like, right now my smart home situation is like, I pull up the home app on my iPhone and I click a bunch of buttons and then find the light and then I turn it on and change the color. You know, I'm like 5 minutes in just to turn on a light.
Exactly. And one of the best parts about not having to navigate a menu or pull up a folder on your computer, on your phone, is that with these artificial intelligence assistants, you can say commands in a lot of different ways. And the underlying machine learning will process that command into typically what it will do for you. But you can say it so many different ways that it's a much more human approach to home automation.
Ooh, you're pulling at my heartstrings right there. Like a human approach, making tech human again.
There you go.
So who are the heavy hitters at CES? Who are the people doing voice control and AI assistants that we should focus on?
Sure, and especially at CES, you saw a pretty big appearance by Google. they were probably
They came out swinging.
they really came out swinging, Dane. I think this year they were probably the heaviest hitters at CES with their Google Assistant. But we also saw quite a bit of Amazon Alexa or Amazon Echo, and we'll kind of dive a little bit into that and what the differences are with those. We even saw an appearance by Cortana, which
Who's
is
Cortana?
Cortana is she's the AI for Master Chief, number one. But but number two, she is the AI from Microsoft, and even she made an appearance at CES this year, which took a few people by surprise. They've been a little bit more subdued in recent years. And like I mentioned earlier, we didn't see anything from Apple or Siri, but Samsung, actually with their own AI called Bixby, they did try to make a few points at CES this year.
Bixby's a hard name to say.
Yeah, and it's even harder to use, I'll tell you that much.
Yes. All right, we'll start with Google then. Google's AI assistant, that's what they call it, right?
Right, Google Assistant.
Google Assistant, that's what it is. It's on a lot of products and it works really well. It's probably one of the more advanced ones, right?
Yeah, I would say as much. In fact, one of the highlights of this year's CES was Google Assistant All the Things. That's not something we've seen so much in the past. Typically, you've seen Google Assistant live on Android phones, mostly on what is it called? The Google Pixel.
Right.
Had a little mind bleep there. And you would see that on the Google Home products. This year, we saw them bring it to a lot of third-party products. We saw the very first screen Google Assistant smart display, the Lenovo Smart Display, which is the first competitor we've seen from Google for the Echo Show, which is also a tablet
That Amazon makes.
Echo device. Exactly. So having that screen there does change the dynamic. You see your calendar pull up in front of you. You can pull up videos right on the device using Google Assistant. We saw them start to integrate Google Assistant in more smart TVs, which hasn't been seen much before. In microwaves, even in refrigerators. So
What?
yeah,
What? So seeing Google Assistant in a microwave or in a TV, I can understand the TV because then you just speak to your TV, kind of the way you do now with your Google Home and Chromecast.
right. Yeah, I mean it's certainly a different dynamic. What I see happening here is actually Google playing catch up. We saw a lot of what Google is doing this year at CES. Amazon announced similar things last year. Amazon had a much more subtle approach to CES this year because I feel like last year they were more of the heavy hitters. They were integrating Amazon Alexa into a lot of different products, into cars, into refrigerators, into microwaves. And now we see Google trying to do the same thing.
So Google's playing catch up this year, whereas Amazon didn't have nearly as big of a presence at CES, but they're kind of like I would call them the leader in this space right now. They're on the most products. They're in the most products. You see them most places. I feel like more people have, when they think about home automation, they think Amazon Alexa.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that is mainly attributed to them having almost an entire year head start on the Google Home. When the Google Home was announced, it was an obvious competitor to the Amazon Echo. And so they've had a little bit more space to integrate their smart AI into other devices because they were the only smart speaker on the market for about a year.
Do you know what? So it's something I saw on the internet that was announced at CES. It's like, you know how you can get a charger for your phone that goes into the cigarette lighter on your car?
Oh, yeah.
It was something like that, but it had Amazon Alexa built into it.
Ooh.
Right? So I thought that was so interesting because you see a lot of what I saw a lot from CES, it's like both with Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa, is all these little weird third-party devices that put these assistants in different parts of your life, whether it's in your car, in your home, on a TV screen, on a tablet, whatever, right? On a microwave, like you said. But I thought that was such a curious thing. Like, whoa, like I could have like an assistant, an AI assistant in my car. I don't know what I'd use it for, though.
Well, I think that's one of the more compelling things we're starting to see come out of these companies is that, and especially to the listeners of this podcast, I don't expect many to go out straight away and buy a new refrigerator or buy a new microwave just solely because of the AI integration. I think that these companies want to do or sell us products that we can easily integrate into what we already have in our house. So what they end up doing is if you pick up a Google Home or an Amazon Echo, you can connect that to your lights. You can connect that to the Chromecast that you already have. You you possibly can already connect it to your thermostat that you already have installed, and you can just build up from there.
And that's kind of a theme of home automation. It's like incremental. You buy little bits and pieces along the way.
Yeah.
Um, that's really interesting. So what about the Cortana thing? I kind of want to compare, or let's talk about Windows Cortana.
Sure.
So what was their presence at CES?
So they had one product of note, and Cortana was announced to be integrated into another smart thermostat, which is already a fairly crowded market as far as thermostats go. But they did show a very sleek-looking thermostat integrating Cortana. I'm a little bit weary of that. Cortana doesn't have a stellar track record, and Microsoft doesn't seem to be putting a lot of confidence behind it.
Is it better to kind of buy into the Google Assistant and or the Amazon Alexa versus going the Cortana route or another one?
I think if you were to ask me today, Ryan, where do I start with artificial intelligence?
Ryan, where do I start with artificial intelligence, with home automation? Where do I start?
That's a good question, Dane. I would say at the moment, Google or Amazon will give you the best bang for your buck. I think it is still to be seen how well Siri can integrate in this way with the Apple HomePod, but that is currently not released, and it's not reviewed either.
So that gets us to the next heavy hitter at CES, or lack thereof. Apple and Siri and HomePod. They weren't at CES really at all, right?
Correct. And in fact, there is some speculation from market analysts that we actually might see the release of the HomePod just in the next few weeks. The release was delayed from last year until early 2018.
So the HomePod, as a refresher, that's Apple's competitor to the Google Home, the Amazon Echo, like a smart assistant enabled speaker, correct?
Correct.
That you put in your home, you can talk to it, play music, the whole shebang. But I think it's kind of interesting that we're all kind of waiting for Apple to make a big splash in this market because it's something that I think they should be getting into and they could do really well. But it seems like they're kind of behind.
Its success remains to be seen. A lot of folks wonder if maybe it's just too late in the game for them to get into the market. Siri has probably been around longer than any of the other smart assistants.
But it's not the best one.
But it certainly is not the best one, Dane.
I want it to be the best one.
Well, certainly, especially because iOS is so prevalent in the mobile market. Everybody has Siri with them. Everybody already has HomeKit there. And while we're on the subject, it might worth be going into what HomeKit is, because that's something that's already out. That's a home automation tool. And what that is basically you can use Siri straight on your phone or HomeKit to control devices in your home. The range for devices that work with HomeKit is a lot more limited than Amazon and Google, and that's because Apple takes its security a lot more seriously, and they actually require a physical chip, a specialized Apple chip, to be installed into each device that is compatible with HomeKit, and that is not the case for its competitors.
So that's kind of interesting. So with Google and Amazon, where we see third-party manufacturers putting in Alexa and Google Assistant into their products, Apple's solution to this is you don't put Siri into the product. Siri lives on an iOS device, but they have this HomeKit system where manufacturers can make their product compatible with iOS and the Siri. So they have a slightly different approach. And like you said, it requires a physical chip. I will say this, though. Stuff that's HomeKit enabled works really well.
That's been my experience too.
Like I have smart lights. I had a smart lock for a while that was HomeKit, and it just works so much better than my experience with Amazon Echo and Alexa.
Quality is a lot higher for Apple on the products that it's compatible with. But if you do have your eye on a certain smart home product, a lot of the time you'll see that the HomeKit integration is not quite there, and a lot of times it might even be a year. The release might be a year or so after it's already compatible in other devices. So there is a bit of a waiting game involved, but a lot of times the wait is worth it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I felt like I read on the interwebs that Apple was getting rid of the requirement to have a physical chip for a HomeKit-enabled device. So now it's just going to be a software-based thing. I bring it up because I felt like I read online that IKEA is going to start making their lights and the other electronics they make HomeKit enabled. And they were working with Apple so that it could just be a software update or firmware update rather, versus having to come up with a whole new product with a chip in it and being like, oh, now it's HomeKit enabled.
I wouldn't be surprised, and I mean that would be a game changer because you do see a lot of devices just not even available on HomeKit, and if they are, like I mentioned before, severely delayed in order to get it compatible with what Apple wants as far as security goes.
I do know IKEA and Apple have been working together on that front, and I may be wrong, but I'm like 90% sure that their IKEA's smart lights are HomeKit enabled now. However, if you ask an IKEA person at the store, they won't know. I tried it once, and they were like, "No, I don't know what that is," and I was like, "Dang it, I need to test that out." All right, let's hit the last heavy hitter in this scheme, the Samsung Bixby.
Sure, Samsung Bixby. If the market wasn't already crowded, well, it is now. Samsung is pushing their own proprietary artificial.
Of course, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you, right? There is a lot of skepticism regarding their AI, just by the fact that they don't really have access to the data that people like Google and Amazon and even Apple do. And so this late in the game, it remains to be seen if that integration can trump something like Google Assistant, or honestly, a couple years down the road, I wouldn't be surprised seeing them scrap it all together and just link up with Google Assistant since they're already on the Android train.
Exactly. I'm a little cynical towards Samsung. I'm just biased towards Samsung stuff naturally because it's no secret that I'm very much an Apple fanboy. I really buy into the Apple ecosystem. But when Samsung announced Bixby on their latest phone, when they already have Google Assistant baked into their software, to me it just seemed like a money-making, like a marketing ploy. This is their way to to push their software, to push their features, their brand, and to make money off of that somehow. And I think you're right, Ryan. I think they're going to ditch Bixby down the road.
One could hope.
I hope so. I don't have high hopes for Bixby.
They did announce at CES that 90% of their current products are Internet of Things enabled. So what that means is that they're able to communicate with each other and with the cloud or with the internet.
Internet of Things, buzzword.
Yeah, there's your buzzword for the day. But I imagine them wanting to see more integration with Bixby on that level. Since the majority of their products can already connect to the internet, they'd like to have an AI that can push it to the next level.
Cool. So I think that rounds up the heavy hitters that we saw at CES and the heavy hitters that how the smart home landscape looks. We have Google, Amazon, Apple, Windows, and Samsung all contending for this space.
Correct.
So Ryan, because you're the home automation expert in the room right now, because you got a smart lock.
I do. Yes, I do.
What should be if I were getting into building a smart home, getting into home automation, what should be my first smart home thingy?
Your first smart home thingy. I like that.
Where do I even start? Who do I choose? Can you shed some light on that?
Well, let me tell you where I started. I started myself with the Google Home. And I got the Google Home to start everything off because, in a way, it can kind of act like your hub. It has a whole list of third-party devices and software that it can integrate with, and it's a great place to start because there's a good chance you already have something in your house you can connect it to.
Google's so ubiquitous too that the integration of Google into our lives it's inevitable.
Exactly. I mean, I started out simply with a Google Home and a Google Chromecast connected to my TV, and that, in fact, is still my favorite part of the home automation. We have a TV with something that's called HDMI CEC. That integration with the Chromecast allows us to tell Google Home to play a song, to play a TV show, to play a movie, whether it be through Netflix, whether it be through YouTube. It will send that signal to the TV. If the TV's off, it'll turn it on. If the TV's on a different input, it will automatically switch that input, and it will start playing lightning fast.
So it's only two peripherals. It's a Google Home or a Google Mini.
Right.
And a Chromecast, what you put into your TV. And I've seen you work that thing, and it was pretty solid. And I was supremely jealous because I have an Apple TV. You have an Apple TV too as well.
Right.
But I don't have any way to command my Apple TV to turn on and play me a video. And I've seen you do this with your kid. you have a 1.5-year-old, and you'll be like, play this YouTube video for my kid, and it just turns on, starts playing, and it just, it's just a beautifully convenient thing.
I personally love it. Shortly after connecting the Chromecast with our Google Home, we bought some Philips Hue smart light bulbs, which we put in our downstairs. And holding my infant child, feeding him a bottle, telling Google to turn the lights low and to play a lullaby on the TV, all with my voice. It's a very magical moment.
Oh, that's a tech yes right there. That is such a big tech yes.
Exactly. So I started with the Google Home. That was the first smart home thingy that I bought. And Google Homes themselves, the smart speakers, are $129. You could get a Google Home Mini, which is just the assistant. It doesn't work so much as a music speaker, although it can play music from the device.
It's not horrible, but it's not designed for that necessarily.
It's not going to get you too far. But those are only $49, and you can typally find them for $29 even.
If you find them on sale, yeah.
Exactly. And then they recently released what's called the Google Home Max.
Ooh.
Yeah, maximum power, Dane. That thing is an incredible speaker, and it's priced at $399. What that has going for it is a proprietary machine learning algorithm that can actually measure the sound levels in whatever room you've placed it in and automatically adjust them for prime listening.
So that one's catering more towards like a high-end luxury audio experience.
Exactly. Okay. And I feel like the Google Assistant is kind of just the cherry on top for something like that.
All right. What if I wanted to go the Amazon route? Because Amazon, they're trying really hard to beat out Google. They're a strong competitor.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could even argue Google are the ones actually doing catch up to Amazon. So Amazon is nothing to sniff at. In fact, I have an Amazon Echo at home, an Echo Dot.
You know what? I have an Amazon Echo Dot as well because they were the first to market, and it works really well.
And don't tell anybody, but I have mine because of a fluke on Amazon.com, so I got it for free. Paid for the 1-day shipping before they could ever notice what happened. So so that's why I have my Amazon Echo. I find myself using it a lot less. However, if you want to see a similar combination like I have with the Google Home and the Google Chromecast, you can get what's called an Amazon Fire Stick, and you can see very similar integration. Although I think using services such as YouTube is not stellar on that device. It has a much better integration with something like Amazon Prime Video.
Right, and that's when we talk about ecosystems. That's a deciding factor. It's like YouTube is a Google thing, so naturally it's going to work really well on Google stuff versus Amazon.
Although Netflix integration with Google is stellar, and that is obviously not associated with Google. If you wanted to get going with Amazon, you could pick up an Amazon Echo, typically around $99. I do feel like the speaker on those are actually slightly superior to the Google Home speaker, to the standard Google Home speaker, although nothing to get too excited about. Echo Dot is very similar to the Google Home Mini, and that comes in at $49.
And you can often get that one on sale.
Yeah,
for
or for free.
Or for free if you're Ryan.
If you're me. If you catch it in time. There's a couple other interesting things. Echo Show, which is similar to what we talked about before with the Lenovo Smart Display, that comes in at $229, and that's kind of like a tablet that'll sit on your counter.
So it can show you, like, since it's a screen, it can show you a lot more data, and you can command it with your voice.
Exactly. Echo Spot is very similar to that, where it has a screen, but it's just much smaller, and it's a round, quirky design.
That's the one you can put on your night table and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a little smart alarm clock for you, and it comes in at $129. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, and then Apple has basically one offering for the smart homes.
Not quite out yet, but they will one day.
And that's the HomePod.
Correct. And that comes in at $349, so that's actually $50 less than the Google Home Max.
And $300 more than the Google Home Mini and the Smart Echo Dot.
Yeah, I mean, truly. And I'm sure the speaker will sound phenomenal. I'm not really too weary about that, although it remains to be seen how well Siri will work as a voice-controlled smart assistant.
Right, and that's really the deciding factor to see how Apple fares in the smart home space. I will say, though, Apple, since iOS is so prevalent, like I have an iPhone, I wear an Apple Watch, Siri is around me all the time, and because it's literally on me on my wrist, often use Siri more often than I'll use Amazon Alexa or another AI assistant. So I'm curious to see how the HomePod integrates with all that.
Yeah, remains to be seen.
So Ryan, which these are the offerings from the big heavy hitters, but which ecosystem? Which one should I choose? Like each one offers its own ecosystem, and what can you shed some light on where to steer people, where to guide people
Yeah,
in relation to
absolutely.
that?
I think you would be fine going either with Google or Amazon right now. I do think it remains to be seen how well the HomePod integrates with Siri as a smart assistant. But just noting some of the differences between the ecosystems, we've already touched on those a little bit with some of the video online service integration.
Right.
But with Google, it actually takes almost an Apple-esque approach to its software.
Interesting.
Where kind of Steve Jobs says it just works. And what I mean by that is the Google Home will automatically update on its own. You'll never even know when it updates. And the services and integrations, the third-party integrations that are available, will just automatically be added as they are made available. That's in comparison to Amazon, where you have to seek out each individual skill to integrate that particular device or service with your Amazon Echo.
And that's exactly what my experience is with my Amazon Echo is I have to download the skill, I have to configure it. I'm always tweaking and configuring it to finally get it to work.
Right.
Which means that it works with a ton of things, but it requires a lot more tweaking. And you're right. The quality control is not as high, not as superior as the Google approach to everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think you'll find more services and more devices compatible with your Amazon Echo, but the quality won't necessarily be there like you can expect it with Google Home and with Google Assistant.
And then if we were to compare that with Apple and HomeKit, I feel like Apple, like that, those things work really well. I have some HomeKit lights, and I had, like I said, the smart lock and a few other things, and it just works awesomely. And since it's baked into my iPhone and my Apple Watch, it's really convenient. But you don't have the as great of a range of third-party devices. It's getting bigger, but
Yeah.
it's not nearly as big as the other ones.
I think especially once the HomePod is actually out in the wild, maybe you'll see Apple start getting a little bit more aggressive with services they'll integrate with their platform. But like I keep going back to, it remains to be seen. They have a lot to prove, especially coming this late in the game. One big difference I'll note is, before we move on between Amazon and Google, is that Google Home does allow for separate users, which is really helpful.
Whoa.
And that's something fairly new. So our Google Home can actually recognize my voice as opposed to my wife's voice. When my wife gives commands, whether it be play this YouTube video or show me my calendar, it will connect to her specific Google account, and it will be personalized to what she has on there, which is very helpful
That's a big deal.
when your family is involved. It's not just you talking to your device. So
It kind of seems like we're all going to have a little bit of Google, Amazon, and Apple in our lives. It's like it's hard to just
no
have
avoiding
one.
it, Dane.
Yeah, and that leads us to our next thing too, because our home is our private space, very private, very intimate, and we are allowing huge corporations to put internet connecting recording devices into our homes, into our most intimate spaces. And the way these things work, Ryan, is they're always on, they're always recording, they're always listening. It's a little scary to think about that. So as the home automation train keeps moving forward and progressing, what does that mean for security and for privacy? And like, should I choose one company over the other in that regard?
Well, Dane, it means the CIA is very happy. I can tell you that much. But I jest.
Oh, dang it.
Well, I'll tell you what. If privacy is a high priority for you, then I can't recommend Apple enough. That is their MO, I would say, is privacy. And what you'll see with their devices, what you already see integrated with Siri on their phones and on their watches, is that when requests are made, they are actually encrypted on a proprietary chip on your device before they're sent to the cloud.
And what that means is Apple doesn't have access to those. They can't attach you, Ryan, to that request.
Exactly. Your ID is never attached to it. When they receive that request and when they send the response, they don't know who it's to. They just have the content of that request, and then when it's received back on your device, it's de-encrypted or recognized as you again.
And that's why I actually one of the reasons why I stick with Apple most of the time is because I know that they're not spying on me. I know that my data is secure. I know that they can't figure out the picture that I upload to their service. They don't know that that's attached to me. Like, it's all very secure and protected.
Correct. Now, when you're talking about Google and Amazon, their claim to privacy is that no voice data is collected from their smart speakers until they hear the wake word, which in Google's case is "Hey Google" or "Okay Google," and for Amazon Echo's case, it's Alexa. Now, that is all great, but it does have folks worried. It does have watchdogs groups concerned that at some future point that could change. And it does have people concerned that that is not easily verifiable.
So it's kind of like Google and Amazon, because their approach to data is different, and they collect a lot of user data. So they're able to offer a lot of services and features that are kind of astounding, I think.
While we're talking about privacy, I think in Apple's case, it is a double-edged sword. And in that regard, we've mentioned several times in this episode that Siri is not quite up to snuff, which is a bit perplexing because it's been around quite a bit longer than any smart AI from Amazon or from Google. And I think the reason you see it lagging behind a bit is because they do take privacy so seriously that they don't have the data to back up the machine learning that makes Google Assistant and Amazon's Alexa so easy to talk to and so smart.
So at the end of the day, we've talked about home automation, what CES brought, what we should kind of look for in the future, different products. And then I feel like the privacy is kind of the crucial issue here. Should this be a deterrent? Should I be like, oh, I don't want to get into home automation because, they're going to be spying on me? I feel like my gut feeling right now is we shouldn't be too worried, at least not yet. And if you are skeptical or worried, go the Apple route. It's not like it's a bad experience, but on the plus side, you're going to know that everything is secure and private.
Well, and I think it's also important to look at the bigger picture and see where we are at currently. And that's not just with smart speakers. It's every time you search in Google Chrome, every time you receive an email in your Gmail account, there are cookies tracking what you're doing, and data is being accumulated everywhere. And that is what is really leading to the great services we have. But there is certainly a compromise here. I mean, just to kind of wrap this up, what I kind of see is what I like to call the ambient computing revolution. And I feel like we're right at the beginning of that, Dane.
Is this like we had the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Medieval Age? Now we're in the ambient computing age?
We're in the ambient computing age. I feel like we're right at the beginning of that. And it remains to be seen where these things are going. But at CES last year, at CES this year, and probably at CES next year, you're going to be hearing about Google, Amazon, and Apple's proprietary devices. I wonder in 20 years or maybe even 10 years from now, you'll be hearing about your smart assistant in your rug or in your wallpaper. And anywhere,
on your clothing.
On your clothing. Anywhere you are, if you can just say, computer, beam me down, Scotty. We're talking Star Trek level integration here. I think that's where we're headed, Dane, and I do think we're going to make compromises in our privacy to get there. But just imagine a day where you don't need to be standing right next to your smart speaker. You could even be in Antarctica, and as
you don't
long as
even
your
think
jacket's
about
connected to the cloud.
Right. You don't think about how you're going to interact with your computer. You just do.
Exactly.
Tech Yes is where tech makes sense. We produce weekly content, videos, and podcasts to make the tech world a little more human. If you want to support the show, share this podcast with your friends. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. This show is supported by patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/techyes.